Welcome to the Epcotian Adventure,
a podcast where we'll talk about all things Disney,
including tips and tricks, festivals and favorites, and the very latest in news and reviews.
But we're still old enough to remember when Buzzy almost got to pilot a chicken.
This is episode 2. This is the best attraction at Epcot.
Or, there is no best attraction at Epcot. Prove me wrong.
So now, please remain seated, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the podcast as we embark on our Epcotian Adventure. Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Epcotian Adventure. I'm Rod.
And I'm Sue. And this is episode 2 of our podcast where we'll talk about all things Disney, but we are Epcot Centered.
Yes, we are. Today we're going to be talking about the best ride at Epcot.
Hang on. Okay, first of all, there's no rides at Disney. You should know this. We learned this in orientation.
The best roller coasters at Epcot?
Not even close.
No. The best.
There are attractions.
Attractions.
And there are adventures. But there are no rides.
That's very true, and that's something you learn day one. You learn that day one in traditions at World or orientation at Disneyland.
Along with, there's only one Mickey.
Yeah, weird. Today we're going to really be concentrating on what makes the best attraction or adventure at Epcot, because it's not going to be the same for everybody.
Exactly. So why would we say there is no best attraction at Epcot when we clearly love this magical place?
Really, it comes down to what you think is the best. You're going to hear podcasts worldwide talk about this is the best, based on this formula and based on these numbers and based on these time of day. And it's all so subjective that we're not going to sit here and tell you, hey, the best ride at Epcot is pick one. No, the best ride at Epcot is what you have an emotional attachment to.
That's what it all comes down to. And that's why everyone's is so different. And I think it comes down to how you first experienced Epcot.
Yeah, so the first part of what we're going to talk about is generational. We are old farts. Not old, but we're old Disney adults by comparison to kids that are going for their first time now. We went when Epcot was still less than a year old.
It was still shiny when we went.
It still smelled like a new theme park. And there was no Mickey Mouse to be found anywhere.
That's right. The only characters were Figment and Dreamfinder, and that was it. Mickey was not a part of it on purpose.
Can we hold just a moment of silence for Dreamfinder?
Oh.
I miss Dreamfinder. Anyway, so for us, our favorite attractions are different than favorite attractions for some of the younger generation going into it now.
Right. Because, if you are a teenager or you're a young child and you're being dragged through World Showcase country by country, and you're just waiting to get to the roller coasters and going, where are the thrill rides?
Or just where are the rides if you're in World Showcase?
Exactly. Then you're going to have an entirely different experience. If that's how you're introduced to Epcot, it's probably not your favorite park.
You may not even have 5 favorite attractions at Epcot.
Exactly. But ours, our first introduction was our parents taking us in '83, like we've said, and experiencing it as a new park. But it was also this incredible freedom because we were allowed to just walk through the park.
Roam the park. I know by today's standards that doesn't happen very often. Kids are on leashes and harnesses and strapped into strollers like they're race car drivers. But at the time that we went, in a younger era, back in the 1900s.
Back in the day.
Yeah. We roamed the park without the parents. So we were young when we first went, and so the concept that we had of Epcot was we had no concept. We saw the original opening on TV, and so our original concept of Epcot was only what we saw. I actually had written to Walt Disney Imagineering, and they were nice enough and kind enough to send me a actual PR kit for Epcot when it first opened. It included a book and the poster and all of the things that you saw that are now back as retro products at Creations. And so for us seeing it for the first time, we really didn't have things like YouTube and even 1,500 channels of television. We had what we saw on Wonderful World of Disney.
So to be able to see it and experience it on TV and then get to go and actually walk in with no preconceived ideas of what we were walking into was really interesting. We hadn't seen ride-throughs like you can do now, and we hadn't seen a whole bunch of other people's opinions and reactions, and we just got to experience it with fresh eyes, and it was so just
unique,
eye-opening.
Yeah. Our first introduction to it, literally, besides seeing it on TV with John Davidson and Mickey and dressed as a space mouse. Dancing around. The first time we saw it was coming around on the monorail and coming around that corner where you saw Spaceship Earth. And I mean, talk about nerdgasms. Young kids that were Disney fanatics seeing a brand new Disney theme park for the first time. I tell you, when we first walked in the front gates and went into Spaceship Earth, and it felt like Walt was there.
Yes.
It more so than even Magic Kingdom, in my humble opinion. Disneyland is what we grew up with, of course, coming from California. But when we walked into Epcot, knowing that Walt had created the term, and
it was his vision to create this community of tomorrow that, in case you don't know, it's experimental prototype community of tomorrow.
Even though you hear Walt say city at one point,
I know,
it's
that's
actually
so funny.
Community.
And you will probably also hear cast members refer to it as every paycheck comes on Thursday.
Or some guests, every person comes out tired.
They're all accurate.
They're all very accurate.
So to be able to experience Walt's vision in real life, knowing that he had had a hand in it, even though he didn't have a hand in it, was really very cool, being fans of Walt as opposed to just fans of Disneyland.
Right. We weren't just theme park fans. We were fans of Disney, Walt Disney. What we knew of Walt at the time in the 1980s was only what we saw at Disneyland and what we saw in the theaters and the drive-in. And what we knew of him and the creations that he and the company had done up to that time on the Wonderful World of Disney. We didn't have all of the places that you could see Disney as it occurs today. I mean, today, Disney to a kid, even a small kid, can be ABC, ESPN, Disney Channel, all of these other entities that are Disney, as opposed to just what we had. So therefore, what we think of as the best attractions or adventures at Epcot are skewed based on that original emotional connection we had from seeing Spaceship Earth for the first time, walking through the gates for the first time, hearing that amazing music,
that incredible entrance
for the first
music.
time.
If you've never heard the original, you can find that on YouTube, and I highly recommend going to find that. Actually, we can probably link it. I think that's a thing.
I think we'll find a way to link that in
we'll have
our pages.
We'll have Riley, our social media expert, link that for us in the comments.
Yeah, but it's the music that originally was done for the entranceway at Epcot led you into all of the attractions. It was pieces of the attractions music. So you had Energy, you had World of Motion, you had at the time Horizons even, I think, had been added in.
And Imagination and the land.
And yeah, it was...
But they were all mixed together in this beautiful orchestral that somehow still sounded futuristic somehow. And I can't even explain that, but it just says Epcot. It's just gorgeous.
There's a style of music that we hear, including our theme song, if you've heard it, that sounds...
That's why we picked the theme song we did.
Exactly. It sounds Epcotian to us. It sounds like vintage Epcot. Well, leading into that, or leading away from that, I should say, is what does then make the best attraction or adventure at Epcot?
So going into a park that didn't have IP and was only Figment and Dreamfinder, which were brand new, it opened with the park. So there was no Mickey, and there was no Three Caballeros in Mexico, and there was
no Frozen.
No Frozen. There was no Norway.
There was not even Mickey and Minnie meet and greets. Anything like that except only existed at the Magic Kingdom.
No characters at all, which I don't know if you know. This is kind of cool, but this is why hidden Mickeys are a thing.
Yeah.
Because the Imagineers decided to put hidden Mickeys throughout the park so that Mickey could have a presence without having a presence, which is really cool. And they're still so much fun to find. I love finding hidden Mickeys.
And the fact that Imagineers just kind of snuck them into the attraction is just, I think
and
that's
now they're
fantastic.
Everywhere. And I just want to know, if you're listening and you have a favorite hidden Mickey, what's your favorite one? Because there's a bunch of really cool ones. One of my favorite ones is in Spaceship Earth, and it's in the Renaissance scene, and it's the three paint circles that are left behind, where it looks like 3 paint cans or paint bottles or jars were set down, and it left 3 rings, leaving a hidden Mickey. That's one of my favorites. So yeah, I love hidden Mickeys. I'd love to hear what your favorite one is. But that does bring us to the edutainment part of it as well. When we first experienced Epcot in the 80s, edutainment was Walt's version of mixing entertainment with education. And he loved to do this. He loved when you could be entertained while still learning stuff. And that was like the premise of all of Future World.
Oh, yeah. Everything, Future World and World Showcase were all based on historical facts or scientific facts. They were fun. I mean, you had the whimsy of World of Motion and imagination, but then you had the reality of living with or listen to the land at the time. Spaceship Earth. Spaceship Earth is still the last of those attractions, along with Living with the Land. And
even it's changed quite a bit, but it still is the history of communication,
right? Which
it was at the opening.
I know at one time they were going to do a roller coaster in there around the 2000s. Gladly,
I would have been so sad.
Yeah. So. Again, what is the best attraction or adventure at Epcot? It really doesn't come down to what other people tell you it is. What we're emphasizing today is the best attraction is what you say the best attraction is. And again, in the comments, please tell us what your favorite attraction is at Epcot. We would love to know.
And if you have a why for that, I'd love to know that too, because I'm super curious. Like, we have our favorite attractions. We have not compared our favorite attractions.
Nope, it's going to be a mystery as which of our top 5 favorite attractions here individually that we have. We're not going to tell you what you should think
be. Yeah, exactly.
Are the best attractions at Epcot.
But we want to know what yours is.
Right.
So with that in mind, let's go ahead and do our top 5. And we're going to discuss why they're our top 5, because I know we have reasons.
So starting with number 5, Rod's top 5.
First of all, I just want to say, like, I have a feeling we're going to have the same rides, the same attractions.
Very good.
In different orders.
You may be right.
I have a feeling our top 5 is going to be very, very similar. So
okay, starting with number 5. Living with the Land, the current version, not Listen to the Land.
Okay.
I think Living with the Land is a much better version than Listen to the Land.
I agree. For some context, the Living with the Land and what used to be Listen to the Land is a slow-moving boat ride that goes through the greenhouses of the Land Pavilion, and it shows innovative ways to grow and sustain crops and food that they actually use in the parks. And even fish that they serve in the parks. It shows you how they do all of that.
I do miss that when it was a narrations attraction and you actually had a cast member going through and talking about everything live. However,
agreed.
The updates they've done to the initial ride-through segment that you go through with all of the additional rainforest upgrades and the farm segment and all that, I just love it.
And it's not that different from the original, we should say. It's not a big difference from the original, but it is a better attraction. And it's more consistent with the voiceover, even though I did enjoy the spiel.
It comes down to the music, too. The original music
so
of Listen to the Land was great, but it was a children's choir singing. And therefore, anybody above the age of about 10, it was kind of not a put-off. It just seemed to be very, almost too childish to me. And I still love that song, and I still love that version of the song. But when it comes to the attraction as an adult, number 5, Living with the Land current version.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. What's your number 5?
My number 5 is Frozen Ever After.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. And this top 5 was super hard for me. Rod did his very quickly. He loves to rank things, so he had these in his head already.
Yeah, I typed them out. They were
for done. Me, this was a struggle. I went through many different iterations, and this is what I've landed on, and this is why.
Okay.
As you probably know, Frozen Ever After is in Norway. It features the Frozen characters, Anna, Elsa, Sven, Olaf, and it replaced a very nice attraction, which was Maelstrom.
Maelstrom.
You are not the first to pass this way.
Nor shall you be the last.
Oh, so good. And that Maelstrom holds some strong core memories for me as well. So it very well could have been on my list as well. But I picked Frozen Ever After because I love the upgrades that they did to it.
Mm-hmm.
I love the animatronics. I love Sven licking the ice sculpture. Like, there's just humor in it. And the songs are iconic. Say what you will about Let It Go. The moment in that attraction when Elsa sings the song and shoots you backwards into the fog, I tear up every time.
I have to admit, it is one of the best dark ride moments or best attraction moments in Disney history, is that segment from moving backwards through to the to Marshmallow, basically.
It is so, so good. It is so well done. The music and the special effects and the animatronics, everything just clicks in that moment. And that is why I put it on my top 5, because it hits me in the feels every time.
I think the only reason I didn't include that in that vein is because of the IP. I love Epcot, and I'm a purist. I'll be first to admit. I do like the fact that they're bringing some Disney IP or intellectual property, into attractions there, because it's needed for today's market. Bringing in Ratatouille, bringing in Frozen, and bringing in
Three Caballeros.
Three Caballeros, and in the future they're talking about bringing in the Inside Out characters to replace one of the attractions. I've heard maybe Imagination. Thinking about my top 5, it still lends itself in my hierarchy to keep it in the original Epcot attractions. All right, moving on. Number 4 on my list, World of Motion.
Oh, such a good one.
I loved World of Motion. It was the animatronics that were placed in there, and some of the scenes. Actually, one of the big scenes came from the original concept for Western River Adventure at Magic Kingdom, which was the attraction that was going to be built in Frontierland before Pirates, or instead of Pirates, actually, from 1971. It was the very first of the big attraction upgrades or updates they were going to do for Magic Kingdom. The scene with the train, and that whole scene is a takeoff of one of the scenes from Western River Adventure. But I loved hearing Gary Owens talk, and just the humor, the fun, the traditional dark ride feel of that attraction. And like Sue said in the last episode, where you started inside and went outside and went back inside, as stupid as it sounds, it was magical to me at that age. I thought so that was just, you can go outside on a dark ride, and it sounds so silly.
And then you start with the cavemen with the little footprints walking up the sides of the entrance back to the inside, and the cavemen blowing on their feet because all they had was walking, and then moving forward into other forms of transportation. It was just super fun. The epitome of edutainment.
Right.
Like a classic dark ride, as if it's based on a film, but just with the history.
Yeah.
It was history.
So that's my number 4.
That's such a good one. I also love the cop hiding behind the motorcycle cop hiding behind the billboard.
I love that.
That's so fun. I love those little hidden reveals that Disney is good. And again, if you are not familiar with these rides, there are still ride-throughs. They're pretty terrible because at the time, all you had was those giant cameras that you could put on your shoulder.
Yeah, like 8mm cameras. Even in the 80s, we really didn't even have good video cameras back
It was
then.
pretty bad. But there are still grainy, jumpy videos that you can find on YouTube to watch ride-throughs. And we've actually done that several times because we still love them. So my number 4, and I picked Soarin' as my top 4 spot. It doesn't have the nostalgia factor of some of these that we're discussing, but it is just an excellent attraction.
So here's my first question to you. Which version of Soarin'?
Okay, that's tough because Soarin' over California was the original. It was the classic. It had that gorgeous orange smell as you flew over the avocado trees. Still not sure what that was about, but
kind of odd.
Yeah, but it was so, so good. And it was revolutionary because it was the first. However, I picked the current Soarin'.
Soarin' over the world, around the world. Yeah. Okay.
And I would love to know your favorite scent in Soarin'.
My favorite scent in the original Soarin' was the orange.
Yeah, of course.
And followed closely by pine.
Oh, that was good. I forgot about that one.
Yeah. My current favorite scent in the Soarin' Around the World is the African veldt dust smell.
Me too. The dirt.
The dirt. It's such an odd smell, but it reminds me, and again, this hits me in the feels when it reminds me of going to the Central Valley to visit family. Yes. From the coast of California over to the San Joaquin Valley.
Yep.
And again, it's something that I have an emotional attachment to. And again, that's what we've been saying this whole time. These best attractions are based on emotional attachments. I
might should have warned you before I said this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I also have an emotional attachment to it, and that this was Mom's favorite ride at Epcot.
True. Yes.
And we enjoyed going to Disney with Mom and Dad. They were not Disney fans, surprisingly.
Yeah.
But they enjoyed going with us. And Mom loved that. She was scared to death when we first took her on because you would fly up in the air, and that was terrifying to her because everything was. But she absolutely loved it, and getting to see the joy on their faces when they rode it was very, very cool. So that's one of those nostalgia things for me. But the ride itself, even without that, it's very family friendly. Everyone can enjoy it. Even if you're afraid of heights, still do it and just ask for the third row because you don't go up very high. You hardly go up at all.
All right. So my number 3, if you can dream it, you can do it. Horizons.
That's your 3?
It's number 3. It is. I know I had to work a little hard on that one because Horizons holds a very special place in my heart because that was the new attraction, of course, at Epcot when we went. We didn't know any different. Everything was new. However, it reminded me a lot of the Carousel of Progress, which growing up at Disneyland, Carousel of Progress was there until about 73. So from a young age, I loved it until America Sings, of course, replaced it. But Horizons, to me, was incredible because of the length of the attraction. The music from the attraction. And the ride system. It was technologically advanced at the time in that you could choose your own ending.
That was so revolutionary. It was amazing. It was my absolute favorite thing because you could choose how you entered your ride. You could go to space, you could go to the desert, or you could go under the sea. And it was the coolest thing. I almost always chose space because, hi, space nerd.
Yeah.
But they were all so super cool. And they weren't just random, like they were developed from parts of the attraction.
Right.
And again, you followed a family, and their family was separated in different areas of the universe, I guess.
Of the world, outer space.
Yeah, and there was a super cool scene where it was very futuristic because she was talking to them, and you could see them
like a video
talking, like FaceTime.
And then they
Zoom,
all come together.
But it was futuristic. That was not a thing. The fact that you could see someone when you talked to them on the phone, are you kidding? It felt very futuristic, but it felt very attainable. So it felt like near future.
But it was revolutionary at the time. It was amazing technology, even though it's basically a version of the Pepper's Ghost effect like you see in Haunted Mansion. And really, to me, I mean, it really did feel like it was the sequel to Carousel of Progress. I think that was the initial intent.
I think it was,
because General Electric at the time did actually sponsor Horizon, and for a long time sponsored Carousel of Progress as well. It just felt like one continuous story between the two parks.
And it's a similar concept where you're following through a family through the years, and this was following a family like through the space.
Through the future years.
Through the future, yeah.
So what's your number 3?
So my number 3 is a repeat of one of yours. My number 3 is a little farther up the list, and it's Living with the Land.
Okay, Living with the Land. And the new version or the
new version.
The new version.
I do love the original, but just the music alone was such an upgrade.
Yes.
I adore the music for that ride, and the scenes where you're in just where the screens are showing you farming techniques from around the world, and there's the big wide open deck space and the few little silhouettes of props that you can see. That whole scene, the music in there is so good.
It's reminiscent of Golden State at California Adventure, where
yes,
it's kind of guitar music. And
just easy going. I can feel my blood pressure lower. It's just so good. I do miss the spiel, but like we said, it's more consistent this way. And I also love that now they do the holiday overlay.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, it's not a huge overlay. They just put lights on some of the trees. They introduce some ornaments.
The giant ornaments, though, I love that we saw
they
this last year.
They even did snowmen made out of the sand. It's just a fun thing that they do now.
All right, so number 2, Journey into Imagination, the original.
So good.
3 versions, and the first one is the only version that I actually still even refer to. The version 2 is the Voldemort of attractions at Epcot.
It is, Bruno. We just don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it. In version 3, the current version with the Imagination Institute is...
An Eric Idle.
An Eric Idle, who I adore. Anything Monty Python. But it's not as Disney in its feel as the original Imagination. And like I said, I still mourn the loss of Dreamfinder.
Absolutely. And I think the original, even though it was really long, it was so much more imaginative. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that since it's called Journey into Imagination. That's kind of cliche. But it really felt more like celebrating imagination as opposed to scientifically exploring imagination.
Yeah, trying to explain to you what imagination is from a scientific standpoint. It's not Disney. It just doesn't feel Disney to me.
I'm sorry, but nobody needs a skunk sprayed in their face.
No.
Can we please stop with that?
The skunk and the blast of air at the end is just unneeded. It feels, to me, both of those feel very...
Shark jumpy?
Shark jumpy and Six Flags. Those are 2 very common elements to a fun house or some attraction like that you would see at a carnival. And to me, that's cheapening the emotional aspect of imagination, of the attraction itself. It's just a cheap stunt.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that is what it is. And it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's for the kids to go, ew. Exactly. And that's what they remember from the ride, is that it was gross.
As opposed to walking out of the attraction and seeing Figment in the arms of Dreamfinder. That is what sold me on the attraction as well. That and they have the best restrooms of anywhere in the entire park. Nobody knows they're there.
Nobody knows they're there. They're always empty. It's perfect.
And empty and clean.
It's pretty nice. But also the original song where they set up the whole idea of imagination and what about science?
Science.
Can they imagine too?
And Billy Barty doing the original voice was just magical. We grew up with Billy Barty as being a major character actor back in the 70s.
And such an iconic voice. Such
a great selection for that voice. So moving on, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is, I have a feeling it's your number 1 since you haven't mentioned it yet. So I finally get to talk about one first. My number 2 is Spaceship Earth.
Blasphemy.
I know. This was tough. My top 3 were really, really hard to order. I knew what they were, just what order do they go in? So Spaceship Earth is...
Explain.
It's the beacon. It is the icon of the park. It is not a golf ball. It is...
Are you sure?
It's a geodesic sphere. Thank you very much. For me, I'm even going to go so far as to say the current version of Spaceship Earth.
Okay.
This was tough because I really enjoyed Jeremy Irons. I enjoyed Walter Cronkite. I don't remember First Guy. I can't even remember his name.
I do remember hearing him. However, yeah, everything
Walter
after that was Walter Cronkite.
I would have sworn he was the one we heard on that first trip. Would have sworn it. But he was the original narrator. He was fantastic. Jeremy Irons was amazing. But Dame Judi Dench. I mean, come on.
Thank the Phoenicians.
How can you not thank the Phoenicians? They invented the alphabet. Come on. Do you remember how easy it was to learn your ABCs? Thank the Phoenicians. They invented them.
I've seen shirts that say that. Actually,
I own a shirt that says that. Yeah. And a mask, too, from when we had to do that.
Oh, please. No. That never really happened, did it? I mean,
it was all a dream.
It's from our imagination.
But again, the thing that gets me about the current version is not only the Phoenicians, but also the fact that at the end, you get to choose your ending.
Back to the choose your own adventure again.
Which I am such a sucker for that element of it, make it your own and put your own spin on something.
Okay, I don't want to play mock the flawed technology, but in the last 2 years, our faces never showed up at the end. You had your eyes, or just the top of your head, or
The
one
last
eyeball.
time, it was like this disjointed pieces of face that was so disturbing.
It's very disturbing.
It was very monstrous, I will say.
I would agree with that.
It was extremely disturbing. And then Rod's face was fine. So I don't know what happened there, but clues for you. If you're wearing a mask, take it off for the photo. You're allowed to do that now. If you're wearing glasses, take them off. If you're wearing anything in your hair or a hat, you will be disfigured. So I'm just going to just put it out there. It's so bizarre. But when you get it right and your little face appears on the little futuristic figures,
The
it's
little
so
surfboard
much
dudes.
fun.
That's my favorite one. Yeah.
And personalizing that ending is just my favorite.
All right. Well, here we go.
On to number 1.
Number 1, Spaceship Earth, Jeremy Irons.
Really?
Yes. I love Dame Judi Dench. I miss Walter Cronkite. I absolutely loved the Jeremy Irons version. North, south, east, and west. All roads lead to Rome.
Oh,
there was something
so
about
good.
hearing Scar talk through that entire attraction that just, again, hits me in the feels. That is it is my favorite attraction at Epcot of all time, and my favorite version of the attraction. Now, the technological upgrades they've made since then are amazing. The video montage at the end coming down the hill with the classroom, and then the...
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
the points of light connecting everybody.
Yes.
That was very cool. I had actually forgotten about that.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
That's something that just remains in my love for the attraction. Just the entire attraction to me is just technologically amazing. The ride system to me, and I'm a big ride system guy because I was in attractions for so long, just love the ride system on that. And the fact that it is the beacon. It's the original logo and still is for the park after all these years. That's my number 1.
That is very cool. It's also funny, like, you're talking about the ride system, and we went on last year when we took our friend Andy, and it was his first time. We talked about him a little bit in the first episode. And you get to the very top, and there's the grand and miraculous spaceship there, and Spaceship Earth.
The Spaceship Earth.
Oh, and they rotate you backwards, as they will tell you 9,000 times.
Heaven help you if you get stuck right there.
Oh my gosh.
Down.
And then back down the hill, and Andy, who has a mind for this kind of thing, is like, this is super weird. Why are we going down backwards? And I actually had him turn around and look up the hill, and I was like, look at how steep this hill is. Can you just imagine for a second if you were going forwards down this hill? And he was like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah. So, like, the ride system is incredible. And the fact that they thought to turn you at the back so that people weren't screaming down that hill as you're going in slow motion, oh my gosh, that would have been terrifying. But I do want to say one more thing about Spaceship Earth. We're talking about all the nostalgia factor and the first time we went. This is a case where if you've heard the original song from Spaceship Earth, Tomorrow's Child, it is not one that you need to put in your memory banks. It's a little creepy.
It was very... it's very nostalgic, very
70s.
Very 70s, and very creepy.
Yeah, and it went with a creepy montage of silhouettes of children playing, and it was very strange. So anyway, that's one not to put in your memory banks.
Right.
So my number 1 is Horizons.
I kind of had a feeling that's where you were headed.
Yeah.
Now, Horizons almost took my top spot, but it got knocked down by those other two simply because of the nostalgia factor.
And that's why Horizons took the number 1 for me. Of course, we can't go back and ride it now. It has been defunct for years.
Yeah.
But it still lives in my heart and in my memory as just the epitome of a dark ride. And I love all Disney dark rides. I think that they are a fantastic way to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
The original Epcot was all about storytelling, which one of the reasons why we love it so much is it goes back to sort of those roots of what Disney had, of what Walt had in mind.
Right.
And
to hear Bob Iger come back and say that they want to get back to storytelling. And again, I'm not getting into politics. I'm just simply stating that the current, what Epcot's becoming, I think is going to lend itself now towards getting back to storytelling. We're going to talk about some honorable mentions now.
Things that didn't make our list, but very well could have. Like I said, this was super hard for me to narrow this down to 5. Rod kind of had his in the can. He knew what he was going to say, but we both have some honorable mentions that are worthy of a little discussion.
Yeah, go ahead and start.
So I actually, I told you I was going to have 2. I actually have 3.
Oh,
so,
wow.
But to be fair, we've already talked about them. So the ones that we've already talked about, World in Motion and the Original Imagination, would definitely go on my honorable mentions list.
Yeah.
Those are huge nostalgia factors for me, so they would make the list for sure. But the ones that we haven't talked about, there's 2 of those. So mine would be Kitchen Cabaret.
Oh, veggie, fruit, veggie, fruit.
Cha-cha-cha.
Yeah.
So it just kind of, it was cheesy as all get out. It was a show where you watched fruits and vegetables sing, led by Bonnie Appetit, who was your narrator for the show. It was all kinds of cheesy. It was like America Sings, but not.
Yeah, it was more two-dimensional flats almost with animation or as animatronics than actual animatronics.
Right. Not quite as bad as Food Rocks, which was the successor to Kitchen Cabaret, which I did not enjoy as much and unfortunately remember better.
Gotta read the wrapper.
But it was a good time. I remember really enjoying it as a kid and just enjoying the cheese factor. I love a good cheesy animatronic show.
Including a large hunk of cheese. That
is also accurate.
Well, my honorable mention is the original Energy Pavilion. There was 45 minutes of
Nap
watching
time.
People fall asleep. Yes. But it's an honorable mention because of the ride system. Yeah. Again, growing up, I had not worked in attractions yet, but at a young age, I was very interested in how attractions and rides worked. And so having a trackless attraction, it was like the first trackless ride that Disney had, was amazing. And part of the Energy class that I took, which I mentioned in the last episode, was talking about how the photovoltaic cells on the roof powered the attraction. And so for me, it didn't get into my top 5, but I love the attraction for what it was, even though it was boring as all get out. I love the Ellen version of it too.
The pre-show to the Ellen version should make its own category because that was epic.
That was the best pre-show.
We still quote that all the time.
What is? And
just to round it out, my second that we haven't talked about would be Grand Fiesta.
Oh, okay.
But very, very specifically, the Plant Donald version. If you know, you know.
Why is Plant Donald not on T-shirts and pins?
So if you don't know the story, here's the story. Inside the Mexico Pavilion, there is a small world type attraction. The original version was horrific, and we won't even talk about that in this one because that is not making anybody's list.
I don't know how it was not culturally insensitive.
It was. It absolutely was. Especially the ending. Oh my gosh. We'll talk about that in a whole different episode. But the current version features the 3 caballeros, and they are going around the sights of Mexico looking for Donald. And it's a super cute attraction. There's nothing groundbreaking. There's nothing all that memorable. But there was a time, a glorious, glorious time this past year when the Donald animatronic was not working at the end scene. And the other 2 were, so Jose and
Poncho,
thank you, were still working, and Donald was not. So some brilliant cast member came up with the idea of putting a plant in his place. They then went the further step and added a sombrero to the plant and made it even more genius. And so there were these 2 working animatronics singing around Plant Donald, and it was so just absolutely hysterical in all the right ways.
It was so outside the norm that it was brilliant.
He became an instant fan favorite. And yeah, he should be on T-shirts. They should be having, I would literally die for a Plant Donald Loungefly. If anyone's listening, like, I want that to be a thing.
Or a Plant Donald Funko.
Oh my gosh.
That's what we're missing.
Seriously, Funko, are you listening? This needs to be a thing. So that makes my list just for that factor.
So that's our top 5.
I think it's interesting that we actually did have different ones on our top 5.
Yeah, what do you think of my top 5? I mean, do you think that's...
I was surprised in the moment. I'm not really looking back. It all makes sense. It all absolutely makes sense.
It's all individual choices, too. Again, what hits you in the feels and what you remember and what is emotional to you.
Yes, which is why the thrill rides didn't make either of our list.
Yeah, Guardians is a great ride. Well, Frozen did, and that's not really a thrill ride, but it at least it's a higher energy ride.
And one of the newer ones. Yeah. But let's talk about Cosmic Rewind for a second, because it didn't make either of our lists, and a lot of people say it's the best ride at Disney, not just at Epcot, but at Disney. And it didn't make either one of our lists. Let's just talk about Cosmic Rewind for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I love Guardians of the Galaxy. Rocket is one of my favorite Disney characters of all time. He's up there with Figment, actually, as far as one of my favorite characters. And I love that Epcot finally has a roller coaster, because I'm a coaster enthusiast.
And it's not just a coaster. Like, it is groundbreaking.
Oh, the spinning
technology.
Yeah, the spinning or controlled spin, almost in an Omnimover kind of sense, where it spins you and points you in a direction to show you a show scene.
Which is probably why they're calling it an Omni-Coaster.
Yes, and that makes sense. And choosing Vekoma to build the coaster was a really good idea. However, I think it just didn't hit my top 5 because I think I'm just getting older now. I don't like the spinning rides. I love the coaster side of it. The spinning side just made me feel kind of ooky. Kind of like a vertigo, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, absolutely. It didn't make either one of us feel nauseous, but it just kind of made us feel off. It just struck us like with a headache for the rest of the day. Just a vague offness. I don't know how to say that.
And that doesn't mean in 5 years it won't go into our top 5, you know?
Right.
Things change with age. Things change with just the way you felt that day when you rode it.
Exactly. And, you know, it is a really fun ride. We laughed and giggled all the way through. We were singing and dancing to September.
Even in the store afterwards.
Yeah, like, it's a really good time. There's no denying that. It just didn't make the top 5.
Sue's top 5 didn't surprise me at all. I kind of knew she was going to pick Horizons at the top. I
I'm very predictable that
Earth
way.
Would be number 2, but you know it's all going to come down to how you feel about it, not how we feel about it.
So thank you for joining us for episode 2 of the Epcotian Adventure.
Hopefully this will give you some insight into how we approach Epcot and why we love Epcot the way we do. That's our top 5. We'd love to hear your top 5 in the comments.
And tell us why, if you know, if you have a reason why. We'd love to hear it.
Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you in line.
Bye.